Dr. Naima Sullivan stared at the quantum resonance readings flickering across her holographic display, her dark eyes reflecting the soft blue glow of the numbers that shouldn't exist. The laboratory deep beneath Geneva's surface was supposed to be nothing more than a standard research facility, at least according to the documentation submitted to the Galactic Assembly's Science Division. "Run the sequence again, Marcus," she called to her assistant, who stood at the primary control panel. The young physicist nodded, his fingers dancing across the haptic interface with practiced precision. The metallic sphere suspended in the center of the chamber pulsed once, twice, then disappeared completely. 3 seconds later, it reappeared exactly 6 meters to the left, without having traversed the space between. "Quantum translocation confirmed," Marcus announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they'd just achieved. "No detectable energy signature in normal space." Naima allowed herself a small smile. After 15 years of working under the Assembly's suffocating restrictions, they'd finally done it. Humanity had discovered something the mighty galactic civilizations had missed or perhaps never bothered to look for. The communication panel chimed, and Ambassador Julian Blackwood's weathered face appeared on the screen. "Dr. Sullivan, I trust you have good news for me." "Better than good, Ambassador. We've achieved stable translocation without leaving any trace in regular spacetime. The Assembly's sensors won't be able to detect it." Julian's expression remained carefully neutral, but Naima caught the slight tension in his jaw. "You're certain?" "We've tested it against every type of detection system the Assembly has shared with us, and several they haven't. As far as their technology is concerned, the object simply ceases to exist, then exists again somewhere else." "The implications," Julian began, "are exactly what we've been working toward," Naima finished. "We can move ships, resources, even entire facilities without anyone knowing. The Assembly's monitoring network is useless against this." The door to the lab slid open, and Director Hassan Rahman entered, his normally impeccable uniform showing signs of hasty dressing. "Ambassador, we've just received word. The Assembly's Resource Allocation Committee has rejected our appeal. Again." Naima's hands clenched into fists. Earth's population had grown by another billion in the past decade, but the Assembly continued to restrict their resource quotas to levels barely sufficient for half that number. Their justification was always the same: humanity needed to prove its responsibility before being granted greater access to the galaxy's bounty. "How many died in the Jakarta food riots this time?" she asked, her voice tight. 17, Hassan replied quietly, including 3 children. Julian's image flickered as he leaned forward. "Then we're all in agreement, it's time." Naima looked at the sphere, now sitting innocently on its pedestal. In the 15 years since humanity had joined the Galactic Assembly, they'd played by the rules. They'd submitted to inspections, accepted restrictions, and waited patiently for recognition that never came, all while secretly preparing for this moment. "Operation Silent Dawn is ready," she confirmed. "We can begin deploying the quantum translocation devices to all designated facilities within 24 hours. Within a week, we can have our entire shadow infrastructure operating completely outside their detection capabilities." "The Assembly's quarterly resource inspection is in 3 days," Hassan noted. "They'll find exactly what they expect: an Earth struggling under their quotas, with no sign of the facilities and ships we've been building in secret." Julian nodded gravely. "I'll inform the Council. Dr. Sullivan, you've done remarkable work. I hope history remembers that you gave humanity a chance to break free without firing a shot." After the communication ended, Naima walked to the observation window overlooking the massive underground chamber beyond the lab. Rows of partially constructed ships stretched into the darkness, each one equipped with quantum translocation cores. Soon they would simply vanish, relocated to hidden facilities throughout the solar system, ready for the day Earth finally showed its true capabilities. "Dr. Sullivan," Marcus called softly, "the Assembly's restrictions, they killed my sister last year. The medical technology that could have saved her exists, but they classified it as too advanced for humanity." Naima turned to face her assistant, seeing the same pain and determination in his eyes that she felt in her heart. "The Assembly believes they can keep humanity dependent and controlled forever, but they've never understood our species. We don't accept cages, no matter how gilded they might be." She walked back to her console and began initiating the sequences that would distribute their quantum translocation technology to facilities around the globe. "They think they're shepherding a primitive species, keeping us safely contained until we're ready for greater responsibility. They're about to discover they've been containing a storm." As the first confirmation signals began appearing on her screen, Naima allowed herself to imagine the Assembly's reaction when they finally realized the truth. Earth had spent 15 years appearing to accept their restrictions while secretly preparing for independence. When the moment came, humanity wouldn't need to fight for freedom. They would simply step sideways into it, through quantum spaces the assembly couldn't even detect. Begin final diagnostics on all systems, she ordered. In 3 days, when the assembly's inspectors arrive, we need to be ghosts. The quantum sphere pulsed one final time before disappearing, leaving no trace of its existence in normal space. Like humanity's true capabilities, it would remain invisible until the perfect moment to reappear. Ambassador Julian Blackwood had spent 20 years learning to hide his true feelings behind a diplomatic smile. That skill had never been more valuable than now, as he stood before the Galactic Assembly's High Council, listening to their latest lecture on humanity's concerning behavior. The Jakarta incident demonstrates precisely why humanity's resource quotas must remain restricted, declared High Councillor Zeichster, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated supreme confidence. Your species still lacks the emotional maturity to manage greater allocations. Julian's smile remained perfectly pleasant as he replied, "The Jakarta incident demonstrates precisely why the quotas must be adjusted, Counselor. When people are starving, unrest is inevitable." Perhaps, interrupted Counselor Nemiria, her tentacles writhing in what Julian had learned was a gesture of dismissal. If humans devoted fewer resources to military vessels and more to agricultural development. All our military construction falls within approved limits, Julian responded smoothly, as your own inspectors confirmed 3 days ago. That inspection had been a masterpiece of misdirection. While the Assembly's sensors scanned Earth's official shipyards and resource processing centers, Dr. Sullivan's quantum translocation network had kept humanity's true capabilities safely out of phase with normal spacetime. The inspectors had found exactly what the Assembly expected, a struggling civilization barely managing within its restrictions. Julian's comm implant tingled, indicating a priority message from Earth. Director Hassan Rahman's voice whispered in his mind, "Phase 2 complete. All shadow facilities are now fully operational." Julian gave no outward sign of receiving the message, keeping his attention focused on the council chamber. The massive room, with its soaring crystal spires and floating platforms, was designed to remind lesser species of the Assembly's power and antiquity. Today, it merely reminded Julian of how stagnant they had become. The council recognizes Ambassador Blackwood's concerns, High Councillor Zeichster announced with the air of one granting a great favor. We will schedule a review of Earth's resource allocations for the next standard cycle. Which begins in 15 months, Julian noted, while people are dying now. The proper procedures must be followed, Councillor Nemiria insisted. Surely you understand that exceptions cannot be made simply because one species is impatient. Julian bowed slightly, the perfect picture of a chastened representative accepting wisdom from his betters. Of course, councillors, Earth appreciates your guidance. As he left the chamber, Julian's practiced smile finally faded. They were so convinced of their superiority, so certain of their control, that they couldn't imagine humanity operating outside their carefully constructed system of restrictions and regulations. In his private office aboard the Earth diplomatic station, Julian found a surprise waiting. Marcus, Dr. Sullivan's assistant, sat in the visitor's chair, looking uncomfortable in formal diplomatic attire. "This is unexpected," Julian noted, closing the door, "and risky." "Dr. Sullivan sent me," Marcus explained, standing. "There's been a development she thought you should know about immediately. The quantum translocation effect, it's not just moving things through space. We think it's moving them through time as well. Microseconds only, but..." Julian's eyes widened slightly, "but it suggests possibilities." "More than possibilities," Marcus continued, his voice dropping to barely a whisper despite the office's security screening. "We've detected quantum echoes from our test objects appearing before we activate the translocation sequence, as if the future displacement is rippling backward." "Does the Assembly have any idea?" Marcus shook his head. "Their entire understanding of quantum mechanics is based on controlled, predictable outcomes. They've never conceived of technology that could affect its own past." Julian walked to the window, gazing out at the glittering expanse of the Assembly's capital station. Among the hundreds of ships moving through the carefully regulated lanes, he spotted a Vigilant-class patrol vessel, the Assembly's pride, capable of detecting the slightest unauthorized energy signature. And completely blind to what humanity was actually doing. "How soon can we begin Phase 3, he asked. "Dr. Sullivan says the network is ready now. We can start relocating entire production facilities into quantum space whenever you give the word." The assembly won't just be unable to detect them, the facilities will technically exist outside of normal time. Julian's comm implant tingled again. This time it was Nema herself. Ambassador, we've confirmed something else. The quantum displacement effect increases exponentially with mass, once we start moving larger objects. The time displacement will increase as well, Julian finished, meaning we could potentially have weeks or months of development time, while only seconds pass in normal space. Julian felt a smile forming, not his diplomatic mask, but a genuine expression of satisfaction. Tell Director Raman to begin Phase 3 immediately. It's time to show the Assembly exactly what humanity has been doing while they thought they were keeping us safely contained. As Marcus left through the secure diplomatic corridor, Julian composed a message to Earth's Shadow Council. The Assembly had spent decades treating humanity like children who needed to be guided and restricted for their own good. They were about to discover that their supposed children had grown up and had learned things the parents had never imagined possible. Begin final preparation for the revelation, he wrote. When the Assembly realizes what we've achieved, I want our position to be completely unassailable. He paused, then added, and inform Dr. Sullivan that she has authorization to proceed with Project Oracle. If we can truly manipulate time through quantum space, let's see just how far we can push those possibilities. Outside his window, the Assembly ships continued their orderly patrols, their sensors probing endlessly for any sign of unauthorized activity. None of them detected the quantum ripples already spreading through their carefully regulated space ripples that would soon become a tide the Assembly couldn't possibly contain. Julian's diplomatic smile returned as he prepared for another council session. Let them lecture about procedures and regulations. Humanity's path to freedom wouldn't be found in their rulebooks, but in the quantum spaces between moments of time itself. Captain Reina Ortiz stood on the bridge of the S-Phantom, watching as her crew made final preparations for humanity's most ambitious deployment yet. The ship itself was a masterpiece of quantum engineering, its sleek hull incorporating Dr. Sullivan's latest breakthroughs in phase technology. All systems showing green, reported Lieutenant Roth from the operations console. Quantum core is stable at 97% efficiency. Reina nodded, her hand unconsciously touching the silver pendant at her throat, a habit from her early days in Earth Space Force. Status of the fleet. All 12 ships report ready, Captain, Commander Park answered from tactical. Shadow formations established and quantum synchronization is holding steady. Through the bridge viewport, Reina could see nothing of the other ships in her fleet. They existed slightly out of phase with normal spacetime, invisible to both conventional sensors and the naked eye. Even the Phantom itself registered as nothing more than a slight distortion, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Her comm chimed with a priority signal from Earth Command. Director Hassan Rahman's hologram appeared on the bridge. Captain Ortiz, we've received word from Ambassador Blackwood. The Assembly has scheduled an emergency session regarding the disappearance of their monitoring stations in the Kuiper Belt. Reina allowed herself a small smile. Those stations had been the first test of the fleet's capabilities, removing the Assembly's eyes and ears from Earth's outer system without leaving a trace of how it had been done. Any signs they suspect the truth? She asked. None, Hassan replied. Their investigation teams are still searching for debris or energy signatures. They can't fathom that the stations haven't been destroyed, they've simply been relocated. Those stations now resided in a secure facility on Mars, providing Earth scientists with detailed information about assembly technology. But as far as the assembly sensors could detect, they had simply ceased to exist. Dr. Sullivan's latest update confirms what we suspected, Hassan continued. The time dilation effect increases with distance traveled through quantum space. Your fleet will experience approximately 3 weeks of subjective time during the 12 hours this mission is scheduled to take in normal space. Perfect, Reina responded. That gives us plenty of time to establish the network. Her mission was audacious, using the fleet's quantum translocation capabilities to seed advanced monitoring posts throughout assembly space. While their ships patrolled normal space lanes, humanity would be watching them from between the moments of time itself. Begin Phase 1 deployment, she ordered. Signal the fleet to initiate quantum jump sequence. The bridge hummed with activity as her crew executed the carefully planned operation. On her tactical display, Reina watched as quantum signature readings confirmed her ships moving into position, visible only to the specialized sensors Dr. Sullivan had developed. Captain, Lieutenant Roth called out, detecting assembly patrol vessel at bearing 47, range 500,000 kilometers. Right on schedule, Reyna murmured. The assembly was nothing if not predictable in their patrol patterns. Hold position and maintain quantum phase. The massive assembly vessel passed directly through their deployment zone, its advanced sensors probing every cubic meter of space. Had they been using conventional stealth technology, detection would have been inevitable. Instead, the patrol ship's sensors found exactly what they expected: empty space. They're passing out of range, Commander Park reported. No indication they detected anything unusual. Signal the fleet to proceed with deployment pattern Alpha, Reyna ordered. Let's give the assembly some new neighbors they don't know about. Over the next 3 weeks of subjective time, while only hours passed in normal space, Reyna's fleet moved methodically through assembly territory. At each designated coordinate, they left behind sophisticated monitoring stations, each one existing slightly out of phase with regular spacetime. The stations would provide Earth with unprecedented intelligence about assembly movements and capabilities. During a brief rest period, Reyna reviewed the latest data from her ship's quantum sensors. The readings confirmed what Dr. Sullivan had theorized. The more they used the quantum translocation technology, the more stable and efficient it became. It was as if the very fabric of spacetime was adapting to their presence between its moments. Captain, Commander Park interrupted her studies. We're receiving a priority transmission from Ambassador Blackwood. Julian's hologram appeared, his expression both concerned and intrigued. Captain Ortiz, we've detected something unusual. The Assembly's Quantum Physics Division has registered what they're calling temporal anomalies throughout their space. They don't understand what they're seeing, but they're detecting our quantum wake, Reyna finished, the ripples we leave in time itself. Precisely, Dr. Sullivan is analyzing the data now, but she believes this might be more than just a side effect. The quantum translocation technology isn't just letting us move through space and time, it's actually changing how time flows around us. Reyna glanced at her tactical display, where the fleet's quantum signatures pulsed in perfect synchronization. Could this compromise the mission? Actually, Julian's smile held a hint of wonder. It might be the key to something far more significant. The Assembly's entire civilization is built on the assumption that time flows in one direction, that cause must precede effect. But what we're doing? It's creating quantum knots in the temporal fabric, loops where effect can influence cause. You're saying we could potentially affect events before they happen. Dr. Sullivan's running the calculations now. But yes, on a quantum level, we're already doing exactly that, and the effect is growing stronger with each translocation. Reyna felt a shiver of both excitement and apprehension. They had started this operation believing they were simply establishing a hidden intelligence network. Instead, they might be laying the groundwork for something far more revolutionary. Complete the planned deployments, Julian instructed. But have your sensors record every quantum temporal anomaly you detect. We need to understand exactly what we're doing to the fabric of spacetime. After the transmission ended, Reyna walked to the bridge viewport. Somewhere out there, invisible to normal space, her fleet was changing the very nature of reality. The Assembly had thought they were restricting a primitive species, keeping humanity safely contained until they were ready for advanced technology. Instead, they had forced humanity to look between the moments, to find paths through space and time that their ancient civilization had never imagined possible. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Begin Phase 2 deployment. Let's show the Assembly just how many ghosts can dance between their moments of time. Diplomatic officer Sanjay Patel watched the holographic displays in Earth's secret command center as Assembly ships scrambled in confused patterns across their territory. Each vessel was searching for the source of increasingly severe temporal anomalies that their scientists couldn't explain. They're finally starting to panic, remarked Director Hassan Rahman standing beside him. After 3 centuries of absolute control over space travel, they're facing something they can't understand or contain. Sanjay nodded, his attention focused on the quantum data streams flowing in from Captain Ortiz's hidden monitoring network. Dr. Sullivan's predictions were correct. The temporal ripples are beginning to affect their faster-than-light communications. Their entire command structure is starting to experience time desynchronization. On the main display, a message from Ambassador Blackwood flashed priority status. The Assembly had called an emergency session of all member species, the first such meeting in 50 years. Time to make our move, Hassan declared. Are you ready? Sanjay straightened his diplomatic uniform. I've been preparing for this moment since we first discovered the quantum translocation effect. The Assembly is about to learn that humanity has more allies than they realized. The quantum transport chamber hummed to life, its field encompassing Sanjay in a soft blue glow. A moment later, he stepped out into his office aboard the Assembly's diplomatic station. According to their sensors, he had arrived via conventional shuttle hours earlier. The emergency session was already underway when Sanjay entered the grand chamber. Representatives from over 30 species filled the tiered seating, their voices creating a cacophony of worried discussion that their translation devices struggled to process. High Counselor Zykster's crystalline form pulsed with agitation as he called for order. Our scientists report that the temporal anomalies are increasing exponentially. Ships are arriving at destinations before they depart. Causality itself appears to be breaking down in certain regions. Perhaps, Sanjay spoke clearly into the chaos, it is time to consider that the Assembly's understanding of spacetime physics might be incomplete. All eyes turned to him, the representative of a supposedly primitive species that barely qualified for membership. But Sanjay saw more than just dismissal in those alien gazes. He saw fear. And I suppose humans have some special insight into these phenomena. Counselor Nemiria's tentacles writhed skeptically. We might, Sanjay smiled, but more importantly we have allies who do. At his signal, quantum ripples disturbed the air around the chamber. Representatives from 7 supposedly minor species, races the Assembly had restricted and controlled just as they had humanity, shifted slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. Impossible, Zykster's crystalline surface fractured with shock. They don't have translocation technology. No, agreed Delegate Cora of the Lysith, her iridescent scales gleaming as she phased back into normal space. But humanity shared it with us. While you were busy restricting their resource quotas, they were helping us develop our own quantum research programs. One by one, representatives from the Nexari, the Voth Collective, and other primitive species revealed that they too had mastered quantum translocation. The Assembly's carefully maintained hierarchy was crumbling before their eyes. This is unprecedented, Nemiria's tentacles coiled in distress. Such technology sharing violates dozens of regulations. Your regulations, Sanjay corrected calmly, were designed to maintain your power by keeping younger species dependent and divided. But quantum space doesn't recognize your artificial boundaries. Neither do we. The chamber erupted into chaos as more representatives began revealing their own species' quantum capabilities. The Assembly's control was built on monopolizing advanced technology. Now that monopoly was shattered. What are your demands? Zykster finally asked, his voice heavy with the weight of inevitability. Sanjay glanced at his quantum communicator, confirming that Captain Ortiz's fleet was in position. It's quite simple, really. The Assembly will be reorganized. All species will have equal representation. Resource allocation will be based on need, not political status. And most importantly, knowledge will be shared freely. You're asking us to surrender control of civilization itself, Nemiria protested. No, Sanjay replied. We're offering you the chance to be part of civilization's evolution. The quantum effect isn't just a means of transport, it's changing the very nature of spacetime. We can either face that change together or watch as reality itself leaves the Assembly behind. As if to emphasize his point, the temporal anomalies intensified. On every display in the chamber, sensor readings showed the fabric of spacetime rippling with quantum disturbances. The Assembly's age of absolute control was ending, washed away by waves of change that flowed between the moments of time itself. Chief Strategist Diana Martinez stood in Earth's Quantum Command Center, watching as history reshaped itself around them. The massive holographic display showed hundreds of ships from formerly restricted species emerging from quantum space, revealing capabilities the Assembly had never suspected. Dr. Sullivan's latest readings confirm it, Marcus reported, his eyes bright with excitement. The quantum effect has reached critical mass. Time itself is beginning to flow differently in regions where we've established translocation networks. Diana nodded, her silver-streaked hair catching the light from the quantum core that powered the facility. And the Assembly's response. Just as you predicted, Director Hassan Rahman replied. Their leadership is fractured. Some factions are calling for military action, others for immediate capitulation. But most importantly, their member species are demanding answers. On the diplomatic channel, Ambassador Blackwood's image appeared. The quantum revelation strategy worked perfectly. Once we showed other restricted species that breaking free was possible, centuries of resentment boiled over. The Assembly's control was built on isolation and inequality. Take those away. And the entire system crumbles, Diana finished. What's the status of the temporal anchor network? Captain Ortiz reports all nodes are operational, Hassan confirmed. We can stabilize the quantum effect whenever needed. Reality won't unravel, but it will never be quite as rigid as the Assembly preferred. Diana allowed herself a small smile. When they'd first discovered the quantum translocation effect, no one had imagined it would lead to this, a fundamental reshaping of how space and time functioned. The assembly had ruled through control and restriction, forcing every species to follow their ordained paths. Now those paths were dissolving into quantum possibility. Signal from Dr. Sullivan, Marcus announced. She's ready to activate the final phase. Diana took a deep breath. This was the moment everything had been building toward. Put her through. Nema's hologram appeared, her eyes bright with the fever of discovery. The quantum resonance cascade is prepared. Once initiated, it will create a permanent network of temporal bridges throughout known space. No one, not even the assembly, will be able to restrict access to quantum transportation again. The other species are ready, Sanjay reported from the assembly station. Their quantum systems are synchronized with ours. We'll all take the leap together. Diana looked around the command center at the faces of those who had worked for this moment. Hassan's quiet determination, Marcus's youthful enthusiasm, Nema's brilliant vision. They had all played their parts in humanity's greatest gambit. Begin the cascade, she ordered. Across human space, quantum cores pulsed in perfect harmony. On 100 worlds, species that had been deemed too primitive for advanced technology activated their own quantum networks. The fabric of reality itself shivered as new possibilities bloomed between the moments of time. In the Assembly's great chamber, High Counselor Zykster watched in disbelief as quantum ripples transformed the very space around them. What have you done? We've freed the future, Sanjay replied simply. The Assembly tried to control evolution itself by restricting access to technology and resources, but evolution finds a way. Humanity found paths you never imagined possible, and we shared what we found. The quantum effect cannot be contained now, Diana's voice carried through the chamber. Your choice is simple: adapt to the new reality or become irrelevant to it. The age of restriction is over. The age of possibility has begun. As if to emphasize her words, the quantum cascade reached its peak. Throughout civilized space, the rigid barriers between moments of time softened. Not enough to cause chaos, Dr. Sullivan's temporal anchors prevented that, but enough to ensure that no power could ever again control all paths to the future. In Earth's quantum command center, Diana watched as new data streams appeared on the displays. Species that had been trapped in technological stasis for centuries were beginning to explore quantum space. Trade routes that had been tightly controlled by the Assembly were dissolving into clouds of quantum possibility. Message from Captain Ortiz, Marcus reported. The quantum wake is stabilizing exactly as predicted. We've done it. We've changed the fundamental nature of space travel itself. No, Diana corrected gently. We've changed the fundamental nature of civilization itself. The Assembly built their power on scarcity and control. We've introduced infinite possibility. On the main display, she watched as ships from a dozen species quantum shifted through space that had once been forbidden to them. The Assembly's careful hierarchies were dissolving, replaced by networks of cooperation and shared discovery. Director Raman, she called, signal all quantum nodes, begin transmission of the technical database. Hassan smiled, sharing all our quantum research with every species at once. The Assembly will call it chaos. They would, Diana agreed, but we call it freedom. Let them learn what humanity discovered, that the greatest power comes not from controlling knowledge but from sharing it. As the quantum cascade settled into its new configuration, Diana felt the weight of decades of planning lift from her shoulders. Humanity had done more than free itself from the Assembly's restrictions. They had freed the very nature of reality from the chains of rigid causality. The future would no longer flow along carefully controlled channels. It would quantum shift between infinite possibilities, carrying all species toward destinies the Assembly had never dreamed possible. In the end, humanity's greatest rebellion hadn't been fought with weapons or words. They had simply shown the galaxy that between every moment of time, infinite possibilities waited to be explored. And now, those possibilities belonged to everyone.